As you guys have heard, we're merging the design panel and the production panel together. There's quite an overlap with production and design. You might say that they some people would say they don't, but we'll let the panel decide. I'm the moderator, called Johann. I'm a professor, focusing mainly on storytelling, animation, production, design, everything. And I'll let our illustrious panel introduce themselves.
Sit on. Yeah. All right, so I'm Erik Pederson. I have started a couple game companies, most notably Frozen Codebase up in Green Bay with my friend Don Geisler. I've been a producer in the games industry. I'm also, my day gig is I'm the director for a university system for game development. So that's what
I'm Tom Howell from New Berlin. Managing design. Oh, design.
I'm Clint Ourso. I'm a studio production manager at Volition. Been there just over 11 years now, and my job is to oversee the production support of staff, their careers, best practices, and kind of directions that we're taking on the production side. We have a little bit an interesting structure there where we have producers, APs, assistants, and associate producers, as well as project managers. And project management is a hard career path along with our producers and AP. And we keep them focused on project and execution, people management, and on the project management side, and then on the AP side, and the producer side, it's all about product quality and feature set that goes in. So we have a unique structure to the industry, but you'll see a lot of flavors of project management and producer. They do a lot of the same things, just all different things. So for us, we have this hard career path. So for me, my background is as a project manager. That's kind of where my college experience, my skills are. Prior to Volition, I was at Telecom as a project manager. So they're very interesting to go from that to games. We talked yesterday, we started this very cat, very active. That's my background.
Hi, I'm Anoop, Shekar. I'm the studio design manager, also at Volition. Clint and I have worked together for quite a long time now. I've been there for 14 years, and my job, just like Clint's, is the same for designers, which is to oversee their career development, hiring, reviews, that kind of stuff.
Okay, great, thanks. I'll start off with a question, and we'll let them answer it, and then maybe we can field any questions from the audience, so we can come back and do it. However you guys feel. Just raise your hand if you have a question. If not, I'll answer. I'll ask one of mine. Being that I think were written originally for design, so replace design with production. And my first question is, what are some universal rules that you think of, rules or processes that you would think apply that would be helpful for our audience in your profession? Erik, go.
Universal rules. How about patience is my universal rule. Yeah, because it comes from the production end, right? So you have to have patience. And I'm done.
All right.
I have patience.
One word. Iterate. Make sure that you continually play something until it's fun before you start launching a whole bunch of assets of that concept. And comment your code or design stuff, and don't leave anything, like somebody said in the panel yesterday, do not leave anything in your brain as far as how something works when you're designing something. Make sure that you detail it out so that your mom could understand and implement what you want to do. And bathe.
For us, I think it's just empathy as a manager and as a producer. You're in a support role. You're patience and working with the team to help them. Communication is fundamental to everything. That you have to communicate. Error on the side of over-communicating. Don't assume people know what they're supposed to do, or they have the knowledge that you have. And then things like that. You want to be on the same page, you're going to collaborate, you want to have a strong relationship. there's a lot of relationship and
Yeah, for design, one of the things people tell me, oh, I can be a great designer because I have a lot of great ideas. I mean, maybe you are, I don't know, but just because you have a lot of great ideas doesn't mean you're a great designer. Actually, the real job of a great designer is identifying great ideas and then executing them. Some of the best ideas that I've worked on or put into a game have actually come from somebody else. And really, I didn't care. What I cared was that they told me something that was like, oh my goodness, I hadn't thought about that. That makes perfect sense. And then it was my job to make sure it worked properly in the game and it was going for whatever it is you're doing behind this game. So I think that's maybe a misconception that a lot of people have. You should disabuse yourself very quickly.
Any questions from the audience so far? None?
Come on.
Let's talk about
We're amongst geeks here.
Yeah. I play Dungeons and Dragons.
I do. I'm actually a very good DM.
Assassin.
Let's get back to
Look behind you.
Let's talk for a minute about this iteration. You said iteration and you designed it in iterations. Let's get more into that. What's too many iterations? What's enough iterations?
Too many iterations is when the money runs out. And not enough is the game isn't fun.
How about you, Anoop?
I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, really, you iterate until you have to lock things down, or you can't go further. But otherwise, your bare minimum is that yes, this game is doing what you expect it to do, that it's fun, that people are engaged. If it's not, you have to finish. That's as simple as that.
When step back, if you're iterating and it's not fun, step back and make sure you have like a strong core loop. Like you do this to get that, like you buy these, so you do this better. Make sure that core loop works. Yep.
Production. No, so iteration. I think the producer and the project manager's job is to support it, remove the obstacles, make it happen. And in that description, when it's not happening, when you're not getting where you expect to be at a certain point in time, there's no hard definition. You have to be the objective eye and say, you guys are way too embedded in this, and you're not seeing the big picture. Take it back. And then so there's that facilitator, kind of that higher level person looking at that, this isn't working the way it's planned, let's just get back and kind of back to the drawing board.
So one of my mentors, Tom Gillespie from Indiana University, said your first idea is always your worst idea. Do you guys agree with that, or is it something you can work with and play with until it's the idea that needs to be?
No, I've had good first ideas and I've had horrible first ideas. It's sort of like if sort of lightning strikes, it's like, oh my gosh, that's it, you know. And it may be like the thing that you need to implement, but then sometimes like I've woken up, you know, I like have a cat by my bed, so I don't miss any of those kind of dream state ideas. And I've gotten up and just it was something weird like the quarterback is on the field and like the guy on the sidelines is blowing plays over a megaphone. It's like, what was I thinking? You know, there's no sense whatsoever. But that's, you know, you don't have your left brain chicken. But sometimes it's just been, oh, I finally solved that because your left brain is constantly trying to organize your thought process. Your right brain is kind of flowing, like in a dream state, like when you're about to go to sleep or you're in a shower or something like that. You can't just be lightning struck by an idea that was intended to be making fun of. Like it other way.
Did you have anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it's, your first idea is just that. It's your first idea. I think, like Tom said, it could be a great idea, but that doesn't mean that you're done. I mean, even if it's a great idea, what you want to do is think, okay, is there something better or different? And maybe you'll come back to that first idea, but just you can't just stop just because you're like, I thought of something else that no one else has thought of, because chances are that's probably not true anyway.
All ideas must be defended. So my ambitious idea cannot be changed. They all need to be defended.
Yeah.
What's making them defended is a defended idea that's a much stronger idea. Chances of success for much. Yeah.
I guess on that note too, it's that's a building block for more ideas. If you feed off of that, and then you can kind of hone down and refine what you're looking for, whether it's the first 100, you should all somehow then.
Yeah, think about it like this. A lot of times when Letterman does his top 10 list, I get number 7 or number 6 is the best one on the list. It's not the first one or the last one. It's number 6.
Yeah, honestly, like, the farther you go in the industry, it's most likely that it could be your first idea from this idea, but that's because your mind is thrown out all those ideas that you used to come up with. Probably won't fly because you're experienced now.
All the trash.
I guess one more thing to add from my perspective is it might be your first idea, your end idea, but you and any other people are collaborating or any others, you never know how that, or even withholding something from that first idea, how it's going to inspire someone else or where they're going to go with it, and then build a greater good or that greater idea that's going to come along.
Good. Any questions yet? Go ahead.
This is more of a producer question, but if you find yourself ahead of schedule or your milestones are ahead of the time frame you normally would be, do you
It's not true. It's not true.
do you find like a situation like that would be more detrimental to the project or more productive to the project if you are in that situation?
Depends on when the paycheck comes for the deliverable, right? If you're ahead, that's great, but that also can, if you don't stick to the schedule and you're ahead, right? Does it raise a flag? Maybe your art team just work extra hard, you know? But when are you getting paid? When's the pay schedule? When's that milestone deliverable to? That's the key, right? If it's midnight at Friday at midnight is your deliverable, that's when you work up until the minute that you have to submit that. Right? You guys just keep going and going and going until it's sufficient time.
If it's like your own team, though, you're not like beholden to turning milestones. You're just kind of like, okay, we have this good goal. Just say, okay, we're done that milestone. Start the new milestone immediately, and then keep going and use the extra time at the end. I'm really going to need it.
Save that credit for later if you need it. But also, I think you look at why are you ahead, right? It's cool that we're ahead and things worked out. We didn't cut any corners. Things worked out. We just maybe our assumptions turned out easier than we thought. Great. Then you have time to iterate and either make things more fun or start ahead on something you know is riskier. You're going to need more time to do it. I think at that point, kind of as a producer and as a project manager, and kind of as that production team, you can look at that and assess it and say, okay, where do we expend our effort? If it's truly that we are ahead, what do we do? And if it's not, you want to dig into some subject matter experts looking and saying, okay, is it because we've got corners or did we not follow standards? Or is it I think it's a technical debt that you may incur because you've done something like that. You just want to assess it and make the right choice. Everything, especially early phases and things depending on where you are, that you invest that time up front and pay dividends later, or it can also cost you later.
Kind of the question I have for you is, how do you define yourself as having finished the milestone that you're actually ahead?
I'm actually referring to the game that we're in. Where our features were set, we're actually more ahead of where we wanted to be at the final milestone. So right now we're at the point of kind of adding more things. I don't know if it's going to be the point where the game is too much to what we were trying to reach to, or if it's that feature. We're adding too much information at the end, or if actually we're ahead of the game a little bit.
So from a task perspective, you're
Yes.
finished.
Yeah.
But you're not really finished in terms of a game perspective, right? Because you have plenty of time to iterate, like one said, you can make it better. So what I would do is spend more time on making sure that all of the mechanics, everything is as tight as it can be before you try to do anything else.
And polish the core, like there's something that's like 80% of your game. Make sure that's just sweet and like if you're going to do something extra, make it really that nice flourish. Just like really spend some time polishing, making that an elegant experience, rather than oh we can do this too because that's going to be half-assed. You know, the beauty is to do it, polishing, center of the people, and wow, this is really well done. As opposed to implementing.
Yeah, like so one thing I saw your game, right, and you were talking about the jump. That's what you should be working on, right? Nothing else. Fix your jump because it's a critical part of the game.
Like Super Mario, like that feels perfect. Spend all the money on controlling Mario. It's game. Hard.
Yeah, if you're ahead of schedule, take the time and show off your stuff to everybody, and they'll tell you what they think. Hopefully, they'll tell you what they think. It's good.
Any other audience questions?
Oh, he's walking over.
Oh, my.
I was just curious, sorry. What your guys' process is like when you're trying to innovate in something. And I'm a little curious as like what it's like if you're just trying to like go ground up with a new idea, or maybe innovating off of like an existing franchise. I know like Saints Row, you're going into 4. Like it might actually help with like the extra constraints and stuff to innovate more, but I was wondering what you guys' process like brainstorming or anything like that you guys do.
So since you asked about Saints Row, I'll say first. Yeah, the brainstorming sessions on Saints Row are probably what you imagine them to be like. But that being said, you know, I personally, and not everyone in this video would agree with me, but I personally don't think it's worth the time to think of something innovative for the sake of innovating, right? I would rather say, let's spend time on executing on an idea that people really want to do, or they really want to enjoy. So I don't go out thinking, how do I make something innovative? I think, okay, what's the next thing we should be doing to make this better? So does that answer your question? Yeah.
Yeah, there's like sort of safe innovation that you can do where you take two things that actually worked in the past and combine them so that it's a new thing that no one's ever done before, but these are both fun. So you know at least you got a leg up on it and stuff. If you're innovating like in a sort of a control space or something like that, where you know no one's ever done these controls before, that's cool, but just know that like modeling learner players versus experiential players are not going to get into your game very well, because you're going to really teach them this new thing. And then experiential people, like it's going to be have to be a badass control system or badass concept, so that people like really go like, wow, this is like a new model. If it's just for the sake of innovation, it's like, well, all these things already work really well, and we're just trying to do something arbitrarily and not substantive. Yeah, watch that.
I guess innovation is really, the only reason I feel you need to innovate is to solve a problem because it can't be solved any other way. And I have to come up with a new solution. But if there are other solutions that already exist, I would rather use those.
I think on the production side, but a lot of times in a sequel, especially knowing what we do, we assume that we have to have new things. We have to have new things. Then you do. You can't just create a sequel that's the same thing, obviously. You have to choose wisely, right? Because there's been talks about Saints Row, and it's very good at the kitchen sink game, where it's everything in the kitchen sink thrown in. So you do a lot of stuff, nothing all terribly well, but you do a lot to play around a lot of freedom. Okay, Saints Row work, but I think it's at the expense and cost of not focusing on the core, doing those things better. So innovating, you need to innovate or do something where you can take that series and that franchise and grow on things very maybe need innovation.
I think your question's kind of open-ended too. Are you referring to innovation for a AAA game company that's making multiple games in a series? Or are you referring to an indie company that may be their gig, right? Maybe they're making indie games and making really innovative, crazy stuff is the way that they do it, right? So, I know you guys are the franchise, right? The franchise is awesome, and it produces massive amounts of money. But some of the indie developers, they have to innovate just to make a splash. Yeah, just to make a splash.
Look at Nitro. They do a lot of games that have really innovative controls or innovative ideas, and that's their gig. That's why they just kind of, but they're making like really small games that are funded either by advertising or purchases by sites and stuff like that. So it's not a huge revenue model. And Saints Row is awesome, fun, something like that. doing what that needs. Ain't crazy in a big city, but so I mean, just understand that innovation is good, and thinking of the right ideas is a great thing, but know that it's rare to hit that like wow moment with something that's truly
Innovate as much as your budget will allow you. Right?
innovate in private and work in public. And then the 10th one maybe.
You had started your question about processes, not about process of innovation.
Yeah, I mean, I was wondering what the, kind of like, the triple A conversation was, like you said, like, I work at, or I'm working with a smaller independent group, and like, a lot of folks are leading something new, but it's only like, if they're, the conversation is always going a lot better.
That's huge. I speak for them, but it's hugely risky when you're spending millions and millions on something else.
And on the production side, the fact that it doesn't have to just be innovation of technology and features and content, right? It can be, you can innovate a new way, a new pipeline, a new workflow for getting that work done. You have an efficiency, right? The process improvement. So there's any level of innovation you do. So from the production side, that's project management. How do we manage people better? How do we produce the game better? Support the team doing that better. So there's innovation there as well.
Great.
Kind of tailing off of in general. When you're making, or when as a designer, you're making a game, usually you're kind of trying to show the genre of what you're into, and it tends to be that people seem to just take something from listening to the genre and listening to the genre, kind of take that shape. If you're like stripping down what the core of that album, that way. So I know that that's like the high end, like, how do you do game in the genre? Oh, you strip it down to the core, you have stuff. Can you give me your take on that process?
Well, I mean, if you're not playing other games in the genre you're working in, you're not, standing on the shoulders of giants, essentially. You want to sort of see what the best of everything that's been done and at least nod to that because they've raised the bar. So you can't fault them for that. But I mean, again, there has to be a reason for your game to exist other than to summarize what games have been till now. So I mean, it's sort of like you have to do both. You have to like say, well, now that the games have this kind of menu or something, or like now that Bastion saves its games in the cloud, and you can go back to home and continue your game. Every game should do that. And so, like, that's the things you have to consider. Like, don't, just make your game a whole and not, do what the player expects. But I mean, again, your game has to have a reason for existing, and the core should definitely reflect some iteration and improvement of the genre by yourself.
Yeah, you saw my talk this morning, but the post we did, you can't define your game on its own terms. You probably haven't done a good job of defining your experience, deciding what kind of game you're trying to make. If it's just, you're just coming up with a combination of these two games with this extra feature, you probably should be thinking a little bit more about what your game is about.
Marketing people and stuff like that have a term called USP, the unique selling point or selling points of your game. And that's really important to pay attention to. And if you're in a big company, they'll talk about USPs, but they'll kind of, basically be lying. It's like, oh yes, it's really unique because of this, and it's really, no, it isn't. It's just like the other one that came out, a year ago, and they're kind of convincing themselves. But if you actually have a unique selling point that would actually attract, a large number of players, and that's what makes your game.
Go ahead back there.
I don't know if you guys had to go through this, but what happens when you don't have a deadline? I mean, negatively and positive. Like, what happens? Like, is it a good thing to not have a deadline, or does other things happen? I don't know.
Well, it all depends on your attitude towards making the game. We didn't, after our first 3 games, we didn't have a deadline. But we were extremely passionate and focused about the precise idea of what the game was. So we were just sort of pulled forward by our want to finish and play it. And that was the thing. And you know, we stole a line from a guy called Tim Swihart, who was on the team doing the operating system for the Apple IIgs. And people kept saying, you know, when's the new version of the operating system coming out? He said, when it's done. And because you don't want it before, you know, they're finished with it and have it all polished to what they think it should be. And that's the way we were in. Just like, okay, this, you know, we really think this is it. This is, you know, the game we set out to make. And again, we also had sort of a workhorse mentality from, you know, making 13 games in a year when we were transitioning from softness and stuff. So we just, you know, didn't overscope things, which can help. But like basically, if you don't have a deadline, try to finish a small scope version of your game and finish it, because otherwise you'll like be Battle Cruiser 3000 or forever or something, and it's just like, oh, it would be perfect only if we did this, or if only we switched to a new engine, or if only this. Like, you have to finish games, and that's like, if you don't finish this game, you're not going to get to do your next one. You know, set goals for yourself and laser define what you want to do, and do that and polish it and finish it.
It's very difficult on a large team, a complex project, when you have a deadline. That just adds levels of difficulty, and you go down a spiral, and it's never going to end issues. But when you do have a team that's focused and senior, and they know there's a common understanding of what one's goals and things you're trying to accomplish, what you're doing, as a collective, drive that stuff. And you kind of have self-imposed deadlines, I would think. At an individual level, I want to get this finished, and it's the experience to know that it's finished enough for what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have extrinsic deadlines, if somebody's not telling you to have something done by a certain point, you need to set that for yourself. Maybe not for the entire game or whatever project you're working on, but you need a deadline to make a decision on any given point. Because if you just keep letting it go, you won't move forward. So basically, you just have to say to yourself, at this point, we will have decided whether we're going to keep this feature or not, or we will have put this stuff into the game, or we'll have to make another decision.
And there's a, I don't remember who said it, but it's a phrase from a master painter that said, paintings are never finished or abandoned. So you can endlessly improve like little bits of your game, but finishing the intent of the game.
No, they said it all. I'd say give yourself some deadlines. Honestly, to kind of sum it up is just do that and try and make them. If they're real flexible deadlines, awesome. If you can afford to do that, that's great. I think a lot of producers would get scared out of their mind and run away from the games industry if someone told them you don't have to keep deadlines. Like, oh my God, what are we supposed to do now? Like, I can yell at everybody now, this is great. But you don't have to because there's no deadline. I'd say give yourself some.
Yeah, like just, I mean, if there's no deadlines, that means there's no estimates of tasks involved, which means they haven't been defined. Kind of, like, or that game hasn't been defined in one. Basically, just like break your game down into tasks that can be done in 1 or 2 or 4 or 8 hours or something like that, and use something like Pivotal Tracker. So something really light that a small team can use, and stick all your tasks in, and then see if you don't think you're going to finish at a certain time or that things are not well defined enough.
If you insist on having a deadline, I would be self-aware and know when you reach a point of diminishing returns that you spend enough time on it and abandon that painting and say, okay, this is good as it's going to get, and move on to something else.
And there are 10 games, like I made 50 games before Softdisk, and there are 10 games that I have listed that were lessons because I didn't finish them. I chose a game that was too big for me to personally do, and I didn't finish them. It was too complex for me at the time, And those are kind of finished paintings. As it is now, they're not really worth going back and painting because they were learning lessons that, oh yeah, you can't make wizardry by yourself. You're just learning basic, that kind of thing. So it's just a life lesson.
Next. Any other questions out there, George? Okay.
After you bless everyone.
Live question. What is your own personal design of production, worst personal design of production? Mistake? Why didn't it work? How did you fix it?
I just forgot it. No, go ahead. I just forgot it.
I hear Erik.
What's your worst personal?
Wow, that's a good story. I'll jump right in. So when I was first hired, I was the first project manager hired at Volition, and was driving the annual review process. And basically, what that is, we get a lot of different input on various folks. Pretty much everybody on the team at that point was on Red Faction 2. And we had a writer who came from fiction. She didn't do games or anything like that. Well, it's awesome. So, sorry, I don't mean to set it up to probably fail on my face. But, so, we all got together and harsh. This first round of feedback, we just put in raw notes and very, very harsh personal stuff and things like that. But you try to clean that up in the context of helping them grow and giving them candid feedback and critiquing and kind of giving them something to progress. Well, I was sending out the reviews. We got most of them done. I was sending them out to the folks to read, and I was a noob, just in there, not really paying attention, I guess, and sent the raw notes. And the raw notes I had no from the general manager, myself, the VP, and everybody like that. And so, I sent it, and I sent a batch of them, right? And something struck me, walked up to my desk, walked away from my desk, went to the kitchen. Oh, yes. It was basically just a Word doc with revisions, and it had everybody's revisions. And so I got up and I sent them all, like, man, that's cool. I got my first batch, and just back of my head, I'm like, something ain't right. I better go check. It just don't feel right. And I went back and looked, and holy smokes, I sent her. Well, immediately beelined in there. She was crying and had three people in there. Three people in there consoling her, and I'm like, wow. I apologize. I'm sorry. Here's the process. There's nothing I could say at that point in time. And of course, I'm thinking at that point, I'm like, well, I'll be fired. So I went immediately to the general manager and said, hey, look, here's what happened. They all laughed, and I was sweating bullets. She didn't stay in the industry too long after that, unfortunately. I feel terrible, and she was a great person. I have all of her novels. Actually read them before all this happened. And she wrote nice things when she autographed it before this happened. I'm sure she would have different things to say now, but that would be my worst, I think.
Thank you for sharing.
I feel stupid. All right, mine, which I just remembered, as I said in my keynote, the first thing was to software for learning disabled kids. So my first one was making change. That worked out really well. But I'm doing awesome. I'll do my second one. It's called alphabetics. So you have this little, like the mama rabbit, and you're a little rabbit, and you go around and you collect letters that are, one's a capital and one's lowercase. So that's it. I'll teach them lowercase and capitals, and you walk around with 4 LBs and a cool ultimate map and everything. You go walking around, it was really cool, and I showed them, it was like, there's no way they're going to be able to use this. This is like really hard controls, and you have to press spacebar to get the letter, and it was just like complete and utter failure to understand an audience. And it was just like, oh, and then I just looked at it, and there was really no way to fix it. I had done this really awesome, tile engine and everything, and all these graphics, and they were pretty good, and it was a complete and utter failure. What I did to fix it was just learn to ask about my audience before implementing it. You know who you're making this for rather than sort of assuming. That is a failed project. It was just so utterly wrong from the start. I just had to do different.
Thank you.
So I'm trying to, I don't know if this is the worst story, but it's one that sticks with me because it's one of the first issues I had when I was working in Volition. We were working on Summoner 1, old RPG for PS2, and one of the big tasks I had towards the end of the game was working on the interface and making it work right. And I was working with the audio guy to put interface sounds in, and I really liked the one sound he put in. I was really great. I checked it in, and then I started getting feedback from people as a bug that, oh, this sounds terrible, and I refused to believe it. I didn't. I said, no, it's great, it's awesome. Well, if you just keep repeating like a key press, it sounds like a machine gun. For those who don't know, a machine gun doesn't really fit into World of Summoner anyway. But I still refused to listen to people, and then finally the lead designer is like, you know, what's going on? I made this decision. This is my responsibility to push this and listen to what I'm saying. Yeah, I don't know if that's really the way you want to approach it. What you want to do is listen. If people are saying, "Have you actually listened to what it sounds like?" I said, "No." Yeah. Let me listen to it. Like, oh my God, this is terrible. I should really change this. So yeah, that was may not be. I'm sure I made worse mistakes than that, but that's one that sticks with me for a long time. And really, what it comes on to is listen to what people are saying. Don't just assume that you have the best ideas.
Like Microsoft, Bill Gates said, I don't care that if I come up with a great idea, I just want the president.
So we at Frozen Codebase, we hired a coder, a lead coder. He was living in London at the time. He was the shit. We moved him to Green Bay, Wisconsin. Found out 3 months, in the summer. Don't do it. Yeah, if you're gonna bring anyone into Wisconsin, I watched you guys. Presentation on. Hey, this is Karnak walking.
Yeah, no, walked in the winter, both ways.
And you never ever sell. You never ever sell a designer from the south or from a different country to the Midwest in the winter. Just don't do it. It's stupid. So we got him and we moved him to Green Bay, Wisconsin. He was part of the team for 3 months. He kicked ass. And about 3 months after that, we didn't do enough personality checking. We didn't make sure that he was going to work with the team enough. We didn't spend enough time with him. About 3 months into it, he had a prima donna attitude, very prima donna attitude, to the point where he brought his airsoft gun in to work one day. And it turned out badly. And we learned by firing him that day. So there's our lesson.
Yeah,
no names.
But his name rhymes with no.
Yeah. Come talk to me afterwards.
I would rather have 2 good programmers than one supposed genius. There's a story in the early game industry, back in the Apple II days, they used to invent copy protection schemes that involved messing with sectors, leaving some blank, so you get errors if you actually tried to normally copy the disk. So this one guy invented this spiral sector copy protection technique, and he was really proud of it. This is my awesome technique. And during duplication, they got so many error disks that they decided, well, we can't really use this to produce this game because it's going to turn up at least 50% flaw disks, and we can't afford that, blah blah blah. And he says, no, this game is shipping with my protection scheme. And he's like, no, we can't do that. So he, back in the old days, they didn't have versions or subversion or whatever like that. He took the gold master discs and locked them away in his apartment and wouldn't come out until they said they would use his copy protection scheme. So that's what you get. Yeah, exactly. It's just holding them in bid. It's like you're blackmailing the whole company because you're so proud of this thing. It's and that's the prima donna attitude that really does not serve. People in the game industry need to be able to work on a team, and they need to know that these aren't my assets, these are the team's assets. And that's one of the questions we ask all interviewees, if you made this thing, and 3 months later you're working on something else and somebody has to touch what you did, how do you feel? And if they say, well, I wanted to ask me about it, I could do it in my spare time, it's that's a warning sign. That's bad team juju, and that's going to be a problem when you hire them and you're not going to hire them.
We only have a few minutes left, so I'll just ask the panel to give us any last nuggets of magical knowledge that they have hard upon us.
I didn't practice my magical nuggets. Yeah, they were very tasty, barbecue salt. What is that about?
Yeah, design production. You have 3 minutes.
How many folks in here are interested in production? How many in design?
Fight it out.
No.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Quick survey. Didn't help me.
Well, one thing, kind of going along with the story I just told, I mean, it's so easy to get caught up in your ideas, what excites you, and really, you know, you're just one person. That if you're going to make a game for yourself, that's great. If you don't want to make money, that's fine. I mean, but really, if you want to work on a team, if you're interested in selling your concept and getting other people interested in it, you got to check your ego at the door. Really, you have to be willing to listen to what other people are saying, listen to how, or you know, watch how your consumers or your people are playing your game and make changes based on that, not just on. Don't try and fight with what you see. If people aren't getting it, then there's probably something wrong with you. Not there's something wrong with the people playing it.
On the production side, since production supports development, and it's basically to create what I look at, my philosophy, and the folks that I hire, and the department that I help mold, create, to be selfless and to give of yourself for the greater good, because the folks that you're managing and that you're supporting in production are the folks that work every day to put things in the game. You do that indirectly, but you support them, so it's, you're not sacrificing to a painful degree, but what you're doing is you're thinking of the greater good. It also, you know, applies to developers as well, but for producers and project managers especially, what do you need to do to help this person? They're all individuals, and this industry is all about talent. What do you need to do to help them be successful in what they're doing? And that should be your first thought, not what's going to make my life.
I would suggest getting the book. Robert Rodriguez, the director, wrote a book called Rebel Without a Crew. And it's a book about his struggle just to get a film made. And it's a good book to make you understand what it's like to be an indie, kind of like, you know, what you have to do. He went into a hospital where they did medical kind of experiments, and they would stick you in a bed, they punch a hole in your arm, stick some like random juice in there, and then seal it up, and then see if you get better. And he did that with another guy who was sitting in a bed next to him, and that other guy was Peter Marquardt, who later worked at Iron Storm. And he said, like, yeah, I want to make a movie, so I need like $5,000 from this. And they, to this day, they have scars in their arm from that experiment. And he says, oh yeah, well, I'm kind of an actor. And it's like, oh, you want to be in my movie? Cool. So if you watch El Mariachi, Peter Marquardt is the bad guy called El Moco, which is Spanish for booger. And you'll see him floating in a pool with glasses on, and floating like this. And he's actually quoting phonetic Spanish off his hand because he doesn't speak Spanish. But that book, to my point is, there's a part of the book where he says, make 10 bad movies and don't show them to anybody. Just learn your craft. And on the 11th one, you'll do something novel and then show it to somebody. And that's basically my thing. It's like I made 50 games before I even got near the industry. Just learn your craft, like finish a bunch of small little games and to see what it is to make that small little thing. And that'll teach you more than any class can teach you.
Eat your vitamins. Have breakfast in the morning before you go to work.
Yes.
That's key, right? I want to steal one from Keith and say respect yourself. Right?
Respect yourself.
It's a musical, isn't it? But you have to, right? You have to respect yourself because the industry will eat you up. It really will. You'll look at the clock and realize fully that you've been there for 14 hours and you should probably go home and eat or maybe brush your teeth or something like that, right? But you have to respect yourself, and you get credit for that because that's yours. I like that. And make sure you eat your Wheaties, and make sure, the golden nugget is to make sure that you are not the Star Trek security guy with the red shirt. Make sure you're not that. because that's really key, because we need more blue shirts, right? We need more blue shirts. That's logical.
Okay, we're gonna end the panel on that note.